For years, she visited the same grave, a woman she never knew. But when a billionaire showed up claiming the same grave, the truth they uncovered changed both their lives forever. In the heart of Boston, a poor woman leaves flowers on a forgotten grave every Sunday, until one rainy morning a man in a suit appears and changes everything. What she never expected was that the grave she tended belonged to his wife. This meeting of two broken hearts would spark a story of forgiveness, purpose, and love reborn through loss. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because sometimes one small act of kindness can change more than one life. It was still raining when Daniel Harper stood in front of his wife's grave long after Grace had gone. The quiet of the cemetery seemed heavier than usual, the kind of silence that made you realize what you'd lost. Daniel had spent years burying his grief under work, success, and empty rooms. But the sight of that humble bouquet of daisies had stirred something long forgotten: love, loss, and guilt all at once. The next Sunday he returned, half expecting Grace to be there again. And she was, carefully setting the flowers down, brushing the leaves off the stone. When she noticed him, she smiled politely. "I didn't think you'd come back." "I didn't either," he admitted. "But something about the way you spoke about her. It reminded me who she really was." They began talking more each week, not about grief, but about life. Grace told him about her long hours working as a housekeeper and her dream to one day open a small flower shop. Daniel listened, really listened, for the first time in years. In her sincerity, he found comfort. In her resilience, he found peace. One rainy afternoon, as they stood beneath the same umbrella, Grace said softly, "Your wife was the reason I never gave up. She told me I had kindness this world still needed." Daniel smiled, eyes glistening. She said that about herself once too. Over the following months, their Sunday meetings became something more than habit, a ritual of healing. Daniel quietly funded Grace's dream without telling her, purchasing a small corner shop and renovating it. When she received the anonymous letter offering her the keys to Lily's daisies, she wept, realizing someone out there believed in her as Lily once had. When she met Daniel later that day, she confronted him with tears and gratitude. "You didn't have to do this." "I know," he said gently, "but I think Lily would have wanted me to." Years later, the flower shop flourished, a place filled with warmth, stories, and second chances. Every Sunday, Grace still brought daisies to Lily's grave, and Daniel always joined her. They never spoke of love, not in words, but in the quiet moments between raindrops and shared smiles. Something beautiful had bloomed again, because sometimes grief doesn't end. It just finds a softer place to live. The next Sunday, the rain had stopped, and sunlight broke through the clouds for the first time in weeks. Grace arrived at the cemetery carrying her usual bouquet of daisies, only to see Daniel already there, kneeling by the grave, carefully arranging flowers of his own. When he noticed her, a small smile crossed his face. "I thought I'd bring them before you did," he said. Grace chuckled softly, her heart warming. "You remembered." For a moment, it felt as though Lily herself was smiling down at them. Two people she had unknowingly brought together. In the weeks that followed, their Sunday meetings became something sacred. They no longer mourned Lily's death. They celebrated her life. Grace would tell stories about her, how Lily sang off-key while cleaning, or how she always insisted that kindness mattered more than wealth. Daniel listened, sometimes smiling, sometimes fighting tears. "She used to hum that tune when she cooked," he said once. "I'd forgotten it until now." Grace smiled gently. "Then it's good you remembered." Each memory they shared stitched together the broken parts of their hearts. One morning, as they stood watching the sunrise over the headstones, Daniel broke the silence. "I used to be the CEO of Harper Industries," he confessed. "After she died, I walked away. I had everything: money, power, respect, but none of it meant anything without her." Grace looked at him quietly, her voice calm but firm. "Maybe this is your second chance. not to rebuild what you lost, but to give meaning to what remains. Her words lingered long after she left. That night, Daniel sat in his office for the first time in years, staring at his wife's photograph. Then he picked up the phone and said, "It's time we start something new." Months later, a small banner hung across a newly built community center, the Lily Grace Foundation. The project aimed to support hardworking women, maids, waitresses, single mothers, giving them education and job opportunities. At the grand opening, Grace stood beside Daniel, overwhelmed by the crowd and the applause. Cameras flashed, speeches were given, but all she saw was the simple message carved on the plaque: "Inspired by love that never fades." As the event ended, Daniel turned to her and said softly, "You gave me back my purpose." Grace smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. "No, Daniel, your wife did. She just used me to remind you." He nodded, tears threatening to fall, understanding the truth in her words. They stood there quietly as the wind brushed through the garden, carrying the scent of daisies all around them, the same flowers that had once brought them together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel placed a single daisy on Lily's grave. Grace joined him, and for the first time, neither felt alone. Love had come full circle, not in romance, but in remembrance, kindness, and renewal. Sometimes it takes a stranger to remind us that the people we've lost never truly leave us.